from the end of getting Tony Benn selected and getting him elected to the start of the strike, and we just had days to get ourselves in action.
It was such a close community. There was no such thing about one being better than the other.
Nobody expected a long strike, and if they had expected it, they would never in the wildest dreams have imagined that it could have gone on for a year.
So we used to take soup round to the picket lines.
And the guys used to joke about anybody who finds a piece of meat today gets a quid. But it was minestrone. We always made minestrone and tomato for the vegetarians.
We'd be sat in the back of the car hugging this urn full of soup and going round to the pits, or it was in the boot and we were holding on to it for dear life.
That soup run went out every morning and most nights.
Of course, then we went on the picket line.
If you've ever heard a Welsh voice choir, multiply it by about 100, and it's coming from all directions. We pulled up the car and we didn't realise we were going through the pit entrance. Well, none of us knew where we were going. And they shouted, "Scab, scab, scab." And I thought, oh God, they're going to turn this over. And I got out, my hair then was long, and I put my hood down so they could see it was a woman. And you could hear this going through the crowd, "It's lasses, it's lasses. They brought us some soup." I was telling you about when I got arrested. It was one evening, we went out to a pit near, it was an Nottingham pit at Calverton. This policeman, to this day, I don't know what was going on, but he said to me, "Where have you come from?" And I told him to mind his own business. It was nothing to do with him. I was carrying out a legal, well, I don't know what bluff I gave him anyway. And he says, "Shut your mouth." Now, many things could be said to me, but shut your mouth wasn't one of them. And I said to him, "Oh, you bugger off," and, you know, words to that effect. And the next thing, 3 of them, they grabbed me and hawked me out with the hair. And I was dragged along the floor, knees all scraped, my feet all scraped. And when we got to the bottom of this cell block, you know, these mobile cell blocks they had, he starts flicking about his pocket. And I thought, what's he doing? And out came a puppet, a hand glove puppet, a sooty puppet it was. And there was the driver of the cell bus was sitting there with the Polaroid camera, and there were 3 photographs of me taken with this sooty puppet. Now, I to this day don't know what that was, but I was told by somebody who'd been a policeman that it may have been part of a lottery that the police were running who could make the most arrests. And of course they'd got to have some proof that it was their arrest. And that must have been his mark, Sooty the puppet. The lads that were just sitting on the fences were lads who had already been arrested once. And you didn't risk it getting arrested more than once, because they used this act and yet you must investigate this if you get a chance. They use the act of besetting. Now, besetting was the Highwayman Act. If you were to stop a coach as a highwayman, that was besetting. And because that's never been taken off the books, perhaps as now, but it wasn't then, as though they prosecuted everybody with besetting. And I mean, some of them still hanging over things like that. And there were one lad got, I think it was a lad called French, and he was in Kent, and I think he got 12 years. 12 years for fighting for his job. You know, that's terrible. It was bad enough, you know, if you got a fortnight or 3 weeks, but 12 years.
And then, of course, it became obvious that things were getting, getting worse, particularly for the families. And so it then came to providing food parcels.
We put a box outside the Labour Club saying, donations for the miners, please. Within a week, we'd got lines of miners queuing up for food parcels. The main food parcels consisted of sugar, tea, beans, Irish stew, and whatever else they got on offer. And then the other unions started to, once they sequestered the fund, the NUM funds, then the big trouble. The single lads really had it rough because from the beginning they stopped their benefit. And it was illegal what they did. And there's no way round what you read the documents of what were written at the time from McGregor and whatnot. I've got them in there. There's it looks like about 5 telephone books full of letters, and when you read them, I can feel the rage, because you see where the outright lies they told when Scargill got up and he said they were going to close all the pits, bar a few in Selby. And they called him a liar. They called him a traitor. They said once that he was waving, and they said he was making a Heil Hitler salute. And at the same time, Eddie Shaw and his bunch were trying to close Fleet Street. And so the print unions were really behind us. And the stuff they brought clothes, they bought food you just wouldn't believe. Van load after van load after van load. And they'd ring up and they'd say, what do you want this week, girls? Well, we'll have these and we'll have these. And they were fantastic. And everybody finished up in the Labour Club at night. And I think all of us must have had bills this long. But you could make a half last all evening. But we had some people from America, miners from America. We had them from all over the place. We even had a shipload of stuff come from Russia. And they're talking about Scargill had this money and he had that money because of the ship. The Russian miners want to know what happened to it. I'll tell you what happened to it. It's probably still in the children's library because we left it there. It was full of wheat. Now, you can do many things but mill flour. we were a bit stuck there.
We had a sort of a token system where if someone was really desperate, we had a place where they could go. This was set up by Chesterfield, where they could go and get clothes for the young ones or what have you.
It was just brilliant. And we'd got our office, and in the office they'd got a list of people to contact for washing machine repairs, a list of people to contact for baby goods.
So we did practically, try and think of everything, obviously. I sometimes look back at some of the decisions I made and that I had to make in seconds, and I thought, if I'd have had 10 minutes, I may have made a different decision. But, you can't... not that it was anything major,
We said, if anybody needs any help, come to us. Don't just stay at home crying on your own. Come to us. We'll see what we can do. We'll help if we can. And there was one young girl, and she couldn't have been more than maybe 19 or 20. So that makes her in her 50s now. And she'd just buried a baby. And her and her husband had ordered the headstone for this baby's grave, and they hadn't got the £500 they needed to pay for it, and it was so tragic. But we got the money together for them for a year, to know that you could pick up a phone, and if you said jump, somebody would say how high. It was heady stuff. It was very heady stuff.
In fact, I was once asked by a reporter, I think she was from Channel 4, what would you do if your husband scabbed? And I said, I'd divorce him.
No wife ever who was involved with us ever asked her husband to go back to work.
I couldn't live with the shame, and she couldn't believe it, and David hadn't heard any of this conversation, and when he came into the room, I said, that's my husband. So she went and asked him. He said, oh yes, she divorced me, no hesitation.
It was the women who were keeping the men out in some cases, because they'd made so many friends, so many links, that they knew if the husband went back to work, that was it, you were gone.
It was really sad, because I know a few women that their husbands scabbed, and they really didn't know how to face me. They were so ashamed, and I couldn't blame them. How can I blame them,
You couldn't come to a meeting if your husband scabbed. It was as simple as that.
But it did lead to a lot of breakups.
We were sitting there this Sunday, and we knew the strike had got to come to an end. There was a slow return to work, because they were using every means. Men who'd been down the pit for 30 years, they were saying, if you don't come back to work, there'll be no redundancy package, nothing, and you're sacked, and what have you. Even then, they stuck it out an awful lot, and they really didn't want to go back to work. They really didn't. And if Scargill and the rest of them had said stay out, they would have stayed.
The phone went, and my friend answered it, and her husband had told her that they'd voted to go back. Well, we just sat there and cried. Seriously, sat there and cried. And the day that they went back, I can't honestly explain how I felt or how the others felt, because we were so low.
There was more tears of women crying and sobbing and not knowing quite what to do, whether to go home, stay with us and have a good cry, or what to do.
I don't know, I just felt totally lost. And it did affect some people. Some people now today can't even talk about it.
They marched in under the banners, and some of them, they were, with 2 days they were back out again because they were being treated like shit. The overmen and the deputies and whatnot. And they brought in different managers and things, not people they were used to working with. And they were telling them, do this, do that, jump here, jump there. And they'd had a year, they'd had a taste of freedom. And if you've had a year, you've politicised, you've done the things you never wouldn't have dreamed of in a lifetime.
When the pit closed, the attitude from the men, I can't blame them, was, well, I wanted to work. They made me redundant, so now they can keep me. You know, and they were saying, I know it's not a very good attitude, but that's how they felt. They felt very bitter, and I think they still do. Well, I'm sure they still do. I do.
Pretty